call to order the meeting of the Traffic and Transportation Advisory Commission for the City of Thousand Oaks. Would you all please rise and join me in the pledge of
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Chair McMahon? Here. Vice Chair Morris?
Here.
Commissioner Gregory?
Here.
Commissioner Lemo?
Here.
Commissioner McDonald?
Here.
Commissioner McKay? Here. All present.
Thank you. A bit of business. Any person who wishes to speak regarding an item on the agenda or on a subject within the city's jurisdiction must file a purple speaker card with the recording secretary before the public comment portion of the agenda is called. Under state law, issues presented or introduced under public comments, unless scheduled agenda items, can have no action and will be referred to the Traffic Engineering Division Manager for administrative action or scheduled on a subsequent agenda. At this time, we are about to say goodbye to one of our commissioners. We have a wonderful commendation for our outgoing Commissioner Gregory. I'd like to read it. It's really beautiful, you can see. And it says, commendation in honor of Tom Gregory. Whereas Tom Gregory was appointed by City Council to the Thousand Oaks Traffic and Transportation Advisory Commission in 2003, serving until 2006. And whereas Tom volunteered countless hours of service and provided invaluable input on traffic-related issues, including traffic safety issues at schools, numerous speed hump requests, traffic calming measures, speeding concerns, bicycle facilities master plan, sight distance restrictions, ordinance changes on speed limits, truck routes, and transportation control measures, neighborhood speed awareness program, preferential parking permit districts, subsidized taxi and crossing guard programs, senior transportation program, as well as Thousand Oaks Transit. And whereas Tom's contributions as Commissioner of the city's Traffic and Transportation Advisory Commission have proven to be an invaluable resource in the city's decision-making process, and whereas Tom Gregory provided exemplary service to our community, now therefore I, Dennis C. Gillette, Mayor of the City of Thousand Oaks, on behalf of the entire City Council, do hereby commend Tom Gregory for his dedication and many contributions over the last 3 years to the enhancement of our community. And so that's for you.
Thank you.
And at this time, we do have the oath of office for our incoming. Well, actually, would you like to say something?
Yeah, just briefly, because I know these meetings can drag on, and I see you have a hefty packet this evening. But I do want to thank my fellow commissioners. I enjoyed serving with them. Especially want to thank staff. They're always well prepared, have good answers, give us good suggestions. And certainly our law enforcement representative who steers us down the right channel. You know, it's been a pleasure to serve this community and hopefully contribute to its benefit. And I wish my successor here, you know, my success and a quick learning cycle. Thanks.
There will be some comments in a few minutes, but next on the agenda is the oath of office by Acting Deputy City Clerk Olivia Hemmons to newly appointed Traffic Commissioner Glenn B. Garvin. So should Glenn just stand up right here? Okay.
Raise your right hand, please. And I state your name.
I, Glenn Garvin,
Do solemnly affirm
do solemnly affirm
that I will support and defend the Constitution
that I will support and defend the Constitution
of the United States and State of California
of the United States and the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution,
to the Constitution,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental preservation,
or purpose of evasion,
and
that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
Okay. Okay. At this point, I just wanted to say briefly that what was said in the commendation was all very true. Your input has been invaluable. Your insight has been wonderful. There's a lot of times, especially when we're talking about traffic around the schools, that your concern for the kids really came out in the way you approached the problems and looked at the situation, and you always seem to come up with some other angle that I hadn't thought about, and I really appreciate everything that you did and everything that you said. So thank you very much. And we're going to miss not working with you. So, anybody else?
I just wanted to say thanks for always doing your homework, because you would share it with me, and you always dug in and came with, certain regulations and different ideas. And as a rookie a year ago, I appreciated learning from that. So thanks. It's been a pleasure.
Are there any other comments?
Yeah, Tom, I enjoy working with you, and we'll miss you on this board. So good luck, and we'll see you around the playing field.
I'd like to echo the other comments. Been enjoyable working with you, and wish the best of luck.
Thank you. Commissioner?
And I only had a year to work with you, but I love it anytime somebody from the community volunteers, and your long list of commendations speaks better than I ever could. So congratulations, and enjoy the free time.
And so at this time, we'll bring up our new commissioner. Welcome. And thank you very much once again. And good luck with everything that you do in the future. Let's see. I know. Okay, are there any public comments? We are about to have a public comment.
What would a meeting be without talking to ourselves?
Oh, okay. Please state your name and city of residence.
I'm Howard Weisenfeld. First, I'd like to also say thank you to Commissioner Gregory for the great work that he's done, and especially listening to the stuff that we had to go over in our past time here with Valley Spring and Upper Ranch in the North Ranch area. We appreciated his feedback. Basically, just as a public comment, I'm asking for the commission in a formal method to request more police enforcement, traffic enforcement in our area. It's just getting out of control. We just had yesterday something happen, which I won't go into, but the speeding and the stuff that's going on Valley Spring is still continuing, even though I know there's things that will change hopefully soon. However, we are asking that there be more enforcement when it's possible. We understand that school limits it in the mornings, but however, there are weekends, there are nights or evenings where we're asking that something be done, and when it's possible to have some more enforcement there as a formal request. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, item number 8, the notes, summary notes of March 15th. Were there any questions or comments on those notes? Okay, then we'll move on. Engineering reports. 9A is traffic calming measures, report by Traffic Engineering Division Manager Halliwell.
Thank you very much. This is a continuation of a longer process looking at traffic calming measures for use in the city of Thousand Oaks. First of all, on page 6, I'd like to make a correction, and the date is 2006. Last month, when the Traffic Commission met, we looked at an array of different traffic calming measures that have been used in this city and other cities, and we identified that array of common traffic calming measures as Table 1, and there is about 20 items on there, and we looked at those, and the Traffic Commission at that time asked staff to go back and examine and review in detail a number of different measures that could be implemented for some of the assignments that we got from the City Council regarding the use of traffic calming and slowing speeds on residential streets for 2 or 3 streets in the city that did not qualify for speed hump installation. In your report, starting on page 6, staff has compiled a recommendation, and I'll just briefly go over the recommendation before we get into a little bit more detail on each of those items. The Traffic Commission basically asked us to look at a number of different things. One was to look at an elevated crosswalk, which is basically what we call a speed table with crosswalk lines on it. To look at the use of raised pavement markers, sometimes called BOTS dots. To also look at the narrowing of streets with the goal of reducing speeds. When a street is narrower, people tend to drive slower. And also to look at the use of residential traffic circles. Not the roundabout type designs that you see. They're very large diameter circles, but these are the small ones that go into residential areas. And so what staff did is examine all those, look at in particular how it may fit into some neighborhoods, and did some rough sketches, some preliminary engineering, and developed a beginning point for our discussion tonight that hopefully on the June meeting, we'll be able to invite some of the neighbors down to show them some of these ideas. Because at some point before the end of the year, our goal here is to come up with a recommendation that the neighbors are agreeing to, that the Traffic Commission thinks would be important and viable solutions, and to present that to the City Council so they can adopt a program, fund the program, and then get on to the next stage, which would be to go through the final design and preparation of documents to go out for a bidding process. So far in the city, we have approximately 3 traffic circles that have been built here. All of them have been done by developers. And so this would be the first step looking at residential traffic circles where the city would actually build one. Staff's report is outlined, takes the approach of a number of different steps so that we can begin with the first step, install that particular traffic control device, monitor and measure the before and after speeds, and receive public input, and then proceed to the next step. And basically that's our approach. It's more of a long-term build and then measure and monitor, and then build and measure and monitor type approach, so that in the end we will eventually reach the point where the neighborhood will be satisfied with traffic flow, the driver behavior, we hope, and it'll meet the goals that we've originally established. So the first step, as outlined in the report beginning on page 6, was to install, is to approach the driver behavior from an educational standpoint and an awareness standpoint. And one of the ways of achieving that is to let them know just how fast they're driving. And as you recall, when we had the 3 meetings with the Camino Manzanas people, one of the main, the 2 main things that they were concerned about was during school period was the congestion and erratic turning movements of drivers, and during the non-school periods it was the speeding. And so we're trying to accomplish 2 different goals at one time. Actually, when it's congestion is occurring, that's probably the best form of traffic calming because no one's moving fast. Whereas we have to look at it from both those approaches, because if we put in some type of a traffic control device that does one thing, it may have a poor effect on the other situation when, say, school is out. So most of the traffic calming, though, has to do with reducing speeds. So that's the basic approach that we've taken in this recommendation. So the first step is what we're recommending is to install these radar feedback signs. They're basically the same thing you see as the radar trailer that you see set up around the city, but they're actually more of a permanent installation. And it's on a pole with a solid foundation, and it shows the speed limit, which is 25 miles per hour, and then it has a little radar measuring device and a little display panel on the same, right below that sign, that tells the driver, this is your speed. So they can see, okay, the speed limit's 25 and I'm going 35, well, I better slow down. So these types of devices have been shown to have a remarkable effect during the short period. So in 3-4 months, it does have a large effect. People goes, okay, I'm driving too fast, I'll slow down, and they're looking around to make sure that they're driving to fit the road conditions and they're interpreting the road correctly. After that period, the past results that we've been able to find out in our research is that the effectiveness tapers off, and people become accustomed to it as it's there. But still, it would be a good thing to have from an educational standpoint. And as many of you already know, that if we have a combination of educational things, engineering things, and enforcement measures that we can put in here all at the same time, then we'll be the most effective in accomplishing what we want to do, and that's make this a more livable street for these people. So the second step, after we put in the radar speed feedback signs, we'll monitor those results. 3-4 months or more later, we'll report back. We'll see what we get some input from the neighbors on how well those work, and then we'll go on to the next step, or we'll modify the step, and we'll look, maybe that won't be the way we want to go. But if we do stick with the original program, it would be to go to step 2, which would be at the existing crosswalks that are already marked, that we would install the flashing yellow pedestrian warning beacons, similar to the ones that are up on Arblas at Velarde for Wildwood School. And those have been have shown to be effective in gathering the driver's attention, and so this might be a good thing to do in this location or in other locations where there's an existing crosswalk, people are crossing there, and we can install these devices. They do take significant long-term maintenance if they are there for a long time, but we think that would be part of the overall program and would fit in. Then again, we would monitor that step and then go on to the third step, which would be a striping method. We would put in either a parking striping line, or depending on how much room we have out there, we would also possibly put in a bike lane. So, and this would give it the overall effect of narrowing the roadway, and to the driver, they would drive more cautiously when they felt that there was less room to drive in. keeping in mind that general road standards and traffic standards have been developed to maximize free flow traffic, maximize freedom of movement, and maximize a lot of things that traffic calming in the opposite sense tries to minimize. So in order to accomplish that goal, which is different, we would have to do things that would be non-standard. So if you do things that are standard, which we already have, the result is, yeah, the traffic flows well, except when school's there, and it flows so well that when there's fewer cars there, people tend to drive faster. So traffic calming approach, we have to do just the opposite. The fourth step is you're getting into the more expensive items when you get up to step 4, but this would be to design either median islands at the neighborhood entrances or along the intersections or along the mid-block sections that would enhance that sense of narrowness in the road. They would also could also be used to reduce the walking distance that a pedestrian would have to walk across the street. Right now the street is, most of the residential streets are 36 or 40 feet from curb to curb. This particular street is 40 feet. So we could reduce, by putting these curbs, it would extend the pedestrian further out in the street so they'd actually only have to walk perhaps 30 feet across pavement rather than 40 feet. So the less time the pedestrian's in the roadway, the better chances are, or improved chances for safety. The fifth step would be to install the speed table that the Traffic Commission was talking about. This is similar to a speed hump, but it's flat on top. The speed hump is a parabolic type shape. Speed table is parabolic on the ends where the vehicles come up, but in the center it's flat. And this would has the benefits of reducing the stepping up or stepping down of pedestrians. It elevates the pedestrian higher in the roadway so he's more visible. And it also has the other effect that it's a vertical deflection in the roadway. And as we talked about before, the basic elements of traffic calming is that you do something vertical in the roadway for a horizontal displacement or a vertical displacement or a horizontal deflection to slow cars down. So a vertical one would be like a speed bump. A horizontal one would be a traffic circle. These are examples. And then there's other methods that are used. There's the illusion method, which is the narrowing. It gives people the illusion that the road is narrow, so they have to drive more cautiously. And I'll just wrap this up with talking about the last step, which is adding the traffic circles. These could be, as well as the speed table, could be the most controversial steps to take. And hopefully with this approach, the incremental approach of doing a little bit, monitoring, measuring, doing a little bit more, that will meet the needs of the people, meet the needs for the traffic, and we don't have to go to the more restrictive things, which are the last few steps. So anyway, that's our ideas at this point. We're not actually making a recommendation because I'm just throwing this to you for discussion purposes. But if we were to make a recommendation, it would be to follow this basic step approach, and having the Traffic Commission already selected the basic elements incorporating that would also be part of this 6 steps program. The final note I wanted to make was about the raised pavement markers. The Traffic Commission wanted us to look at those. We did contact a number of communities, City of Sacramento, the City of Missoula, Montana, a number of different cities that we talked to, their traffic engineers and things that they've tried. We've also tried raised pavement markers and bot dots on systems, commonly called a rumble strip, and we found that the benefit of getting the attention of the driver is not is offset by the noise that's produced by these devices. So accordingly, we don't recommend it to be used in residential areas because people like to sleep at night, and we don't recommend that they be used in a linear fashion, like along a line where the raised pavement markers are spaced close together, because it has the same effect. It creates noise. So I think there's a lot, many other items in the report that we could probably talk about, but I think with that I'll end my report and then answer your questions.
Thank you. Do we have questions? Commissioner Lemo?
I do have a couple of questions. Most of them are related to the information that you provided us. First, easiest question, the radar feedback signs that you talked about, after 3 months, are those in a situation where you can move them to other uses that you want without spending another $10,000? They're solar, so I would imagine they're pretty much contained. There's no power. Can you put them in a sleeve so they can be moved to be used someplace else? Because if they only have effectiveness for 3 months, that's my first question. Which would you want, all the questions or one at a time?
Well, let's do it one at a time.
Okay.
I think the way that would work that those devices, they are expensive, and we would probably want to put in a substantial pole and foundation to support them so they couldn't be removed by anybody. So we wouldn't put them on an ordinary sign pole, which is just, pole stuck on the ground. We'd actually probably build a foundation to make it sturdy. So with that, it may be able to be moved, but it's not as easy to move it. Maybe we can replace an existing sign with a sturdier, heavier pole and foundation, and then just kind of rotate it that way. But that, you're right. That is it's a good idea, and to have the ability and the flexibility to rotate the signs around to different neighborhoods without having to buy 20 of them. Maybe only need to buy 6, and then we can just move them around.
Next questions, looking at page 6 and 7 and their relatability to the table. And what I was trying to do, because the table provides 2 quick looks at what we felt, whoever put together this table. I don't know if it's ours or if it's an industry standard, but the speed reductions are shown on this table, and then also the costs are shown. I'm trying to see whether there was any relatability between the more expensive ones and the greater reduction in speed. Oddly enough, according to this table, some of the least expensive measures, like the speed humps, had the highest amount of measurable speed reduction. Most specifically, though, because I'd done a little homework, I told you last time, specifically in some of the newer communities in Las Vegas where traffic circles seem to be used. And it's really amazing to me that here, and I don't know who prepared the table, but speed reductions in a traffic circle are minor. And trying as hard as I could, the only way I couldn't reduce my speed was if I wanted to cause front-end damage to my car when I tried to whip around tried to cut the traffic circle on the diagonal so I could kind of sail through it. Plus, I thought I understood before that even though stop signs are never supposed to be used as speed calming devices, you can use stop signs with a traffic circle, and the reason the stop signs are there are not to calm the speed, but to establish right-of-way, which coincidentally happens to calm the speed, at least in 2 of the 4 directions of a traffic circle. So, first of all, who did the table? Where do we get the table from? And how does that relate to, say, feedback of the last 5 to 6 years?
The table was prepared by myself, just from information that I've got from a number of different sources. The traffic circles you may be talking about in Las Vegas are actually roundabouts, or rotaries, sometimes called. They're the really large ones. And the purpose for those is to efficiently assign the right-of-way without using a traffic signal or stop signs. So that's why they have those. Traffic enters and yields to the left and around the circle. The traffic circles we're talking about here don't serve that same purpose. Someone came up with the idea that we could put one of these in residential areas, smaller versions that can be retrofitted into an existing neighborhood, and by the fact that there's a horizontal deflection, that maybe that will reduce the speeds. They're not effective in reducing speed because they're small and the deflection's small, not great. So a car coming in there only may has to deflect off 6 feet from his straight path, and that's not going to slow a vehicle down that much. So for traffic calming, and I tried to emphasize that even more on the last page, page 11, and I listed the amount of speed reductions that pretty much has been found in the industry for traffic circles. It's only about 4 miles per hour, which isn't a lot. So I guess in a sense, the residential traffic circle is really more of a neighborhood identifier. And with a little bit of a benefit, maybe it'll slow some cars down. Now you can make the circle much larger than it probably needs to be. Then you have to restrict parking and do things like that, and maybe that would reduce it more than 4 miles per hour about. But we don't know because we haven't actually measured any of the ones here. We have noticed, though, if I just make one more step here, is that a lot of people on the existing traffic circles we have here, some drivers do not follow the drive path. They cut the drive path. So that's always, instead of going around it, to go the other way. For instance, the shortest route. So we'd have to be very careful in how we sign these devices. So it starts out like a good idea. Put the circle there and landscape it, and put in some pavers around the landscaping, and make it very attractive. But then it doesn't really function well, as the overall purpose is to slow the traffic down.
Thank you very much. 2 other very quick questions. To the best of your recollection, when you think about Wendy Drive there, traveling from the freeway towards Borchard, there's stripe narrowing there. And if you can recall the reasoning behind that, was it to slow traffic and to calm traffic? And because that seems to be a relatively inexpensive fix, and you show that as 4.5 miles per hour, which makes it the second most effective. And the concern I have why I'm asking these questions is because while speed humps do the best job, if I'm understanding things right, speed humps are the only things that cannot be done without reaching certain involvement thresholds by the neighborhood. You or the city council, in their best judgment, can put in virtually everything else by your decision and your judgment, but a speed hump has to have so much a percentage of the residents and so much of a traffic flow and those kinds of things. So I kind of put speed humps off to the side, because most of the time in this town, speed humps don't happen unless someone requests it and they bring back enough data to verify it. So first of all, correct me if I'm wrong on my reasoning about speed humps, and secondly, does the street narrowing at Wendy, was that put in to slow traffic, and has it worked in your opinion?
That area is, most of it's in the county, and we've talked to the county traffic engineers when that was done, and it probably was 15 years ago or so. And I don't think it was so much for the traffic calming, but people that lived along the street, because they have access there, were having difficulty backing out onto Windy to get out of the driveways. And so this was what county traffic engineers thought they should do. They'd give them some space. Hopefully people wouldn't drive on the other side of the line, and then they could have that room to do that. It probably does have an effect of narrowing the road down a little bit.
And do you feel the reasoning or my rationale around speed humps is understanding the way things are, or am I missing something? As far as needing a threshold of neighborhood residents to actually cause a speed hump to happen for traffic flow.
Yes, you're correct. That's the way the speed hump policy has been established here for quite a number of years. Was that we only had speed humps before, so the policy was built on neighborhood support and neighborhood need and traffic conditions, and some other criteria. And yes, that first threshold of support in the neighborhood had to be established before staff would do work. Otherwise, we'd be flooded by requests for speed humps everywhere, and we didn't want that. The city didn't want that. So now we're facing a situation where we have a couple of streets where they have asked for speed humps, but they were denied, and we were given the additional task of coming up with substitute ideas that would work. And so we're looking for a substitute idea that's not a speed hump. And but all these traffic calming measures are they're all based on past history in other communities, and the numbers that you see there, such as on page 11, that show the reduction in speed. I mean, they're just numbers that different situations it would be different. Right, and they have traffic calming measures that I didn't even include in here that are, rather extreme measures that you can really reduce the speed, but they're such a restrictive on traffic flow that you get the opposite effect of people complaining because they're too restrictive. So there's just going to have to be a balance. We do just enough restriction, enough inconvenience to cause the drivers to drive the way they're supposed to in the first place, but not too much.
Well, one other measure that I've seen used only in the state of Texas, which is kind of different all by itself, but it would look, when you first look at it, it looks like a Botts dot. It's about 6 inches in diameter, and it's probably about 3 inches above the roadway, and when you hit 2 or 3 in a row, you've knocked out the alignment of your car. You hit the fourth or your fifth one, and you're out of air in your tires by that time. And it's really amazing how effective those really end up being after the first couple $300 a person spends, because they weren't following them. And they're starting now to use them all over. They're using them in between lanes. They're using them at crosswalks, and people just get conditioned to knowing that it's sort of like a speed hump, but they just automatically slow down. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Moore?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to commend the staff on putting the stuff together. It's quite an effort. I had a couple of clarification questions. You talked about the RPMs or the Botts dots not in linear fashion. Caltrans uses them along the edge and in the center, not where people are driving them over them all the time, but to enforce the lines, if you will. Are you also recommending against that in residential streets?
Well, we don't use them very often in residential streets, but we do have them on our larger major streets, arterial streets, and we follow Caltrans standards because they're very important during poor weather conditions for people to see the lines. So we use thousands of raised pavement markers here, but they're spaced 25 feet apart. And if we space them any closer than that, then they have the same effect of kind of we space them 10 feet apart, then people would, if they drive along that line, then it'll make as much noise as a rumble strip would, and so then we'll have residential complaints and things. So we don't recommend it be spaced too closely.
Okay. Yeah, I understand that. My understanding of the hearing we had to specifically talk about Camino Manzanas was that the speeding conditions weren't that different from what we would see with most other streets that are near a major collector, but that the traffic was high but didn't quite meet the criteria because of being next to a school. And it appears to me that we probably can't do much to divert that traffic without getting extremely severe. So I guess in my perspective, we don't have many tools from this toolbox to address that, because we don't expect to change that, I guess, unless we change people's behavior. I guess none of these would be expected to affect the school traffic by and large, would they?
Traffic diversion occurs usually when it's more inconvenient to go a certain route or it takes longer. So then people, they want the most direct route and the shortest period of time to get there. So that's when diversion would occur. So the devices that we've been talking about would probably not add that much more driving time to someone's route, so the volume probably wouldn't change much at all. The benefit probably would be this very small reduction in the speed and neighborhood identification purposes, beautification reasons. Realistically, when we get right down to looking at all this and adding it up, that's how it comes out.
Yeah. One last thing in terms of, and I realize you put the traffic circles at the end, but if we were to apply them like a street at Camino Manzanas, we would also be forcing diversion of people, if you will, from Gainsborough, and how they would go would be interesting. You wouldn't really want to have them significantly interfere with Gainsborough, would you?
I don't understand what you mean.
Gainsborough, right? If you put a traffic circle there, you're also going to be interfering with the major flow of traffic on at least sort of a collector street.
Gainsborough is a collector street, but we weren't recommending that a traffic circle be placed on at Gainsborough and Manzanas.
Okay, so you wouldn't put it at one of those points,
right?
Okay,
no,
that's what I wanted to understand, because I wasn't seeing how that would work. Thank you,
Commissioner.
I was curious about the same question about moving them, and I think it would be great if we could move the radar signs. The problems are around the schools. We talk about it over and over again. So if there was a substantial pole kind of around some of our trouble spots around the community that we could move these around, I think that would be a worthwhile investment to remind people, since it only lasts for 3 months, we have these 3-month cycles where we could move those around. That might be helpful. And so I assume, you say you would keep a study. Do they keep records? I mean, is there a ticker inside these machines that keeps a record of how fast people are driving, so we would see whether they slowed down and when they would speed up, or how do you keep track of that? How do you study that?
Well, yes, the devices, we can buy an upgraded type of device that actually does have that kind of capability in it. What we were thinking about doing was not doing that, was to get the basic device and just do spot checking like we normally do.
Okay.
So just like a snapshot of what's going on for maybe an hour.
Okay.
During different periods of the day.
And then, now, wasn't Gainsborough at one point, right before it got to Manzanas, it was 4 lanes 10 years ago, and I think 5 years ago or at some point it became two. It was restriped to become 2 lanes. So we do have some record. Did speed significantly slow down on Gainsborough when it was restriped to 2 lanes?
I don't think it was significant. We're again looking probably in the 3 to 4 to 5 mile per hour reduction. It wasn't that significant. The benefit that we gained from restriping it to 2 lanes was that we had a 2-way left turn lane, which reduced the potential for rear-end collisions when someone turns from a travel lane. So that was virtually eliminated, those types of collisions. So that was the best thing. The second thing, it gave people a refuge area for people to go when they turned out of their driveways if there was a lot of traffic going in one direction or both. And so it gave them a place to come to rest and then merge in. And it helped with the bicycle master planning by adding the bike lanes.
So it was traffic calming, but not necessarily speed calming.
Yes, it was a combination of collision reduction, speed reduction, and it wasn't so much traffic calming.
Okay. And then my last question is, with the raised circles, my fear, particularly on Manzanas, and how, having watched the parents and how they deal with their children there, is that they would actually become a new drop-off spot for children, that they could make a U-turn and kids could hop off onto this, circle, wait till the parent. I mean, I've seen parents drop their kids off in the median of Gainsborough, that's their pickup and drop-off spot for their children. And so my fear that not only will they not slow down traffic as much as we would like them to, but they will cause, during the congested time, an alternative mess. So I'm a little worried about that. So just for thought.
Seeing the things that I've seen around schools, that could happen. One of the things that some communities have done with traffic circles is some communities take the approach, they put in the full improvement right at the beginning. In other words, they spend all the money right up front and they do it just like they want to have it forever. And other communities take the approach, they put in what they would call a temporary kind of an installation, which basically consists of striping, pavement markers, and delineators. They're glued to the pavement, and some signs. So it's not attractive at all, but it almost does the same thing. And then they watch it for a while to see if they're going to have problems with it. And if they see any problems like that, then they can have a chance to change their mind and not put in a permanent installation.
Remember, the primary frustration that we've had all along is we can't control bad drivers. No matter what we do, we're not going to change bad drivers' behavior.
Yeah, no, I just don't want to add, I don't want to add new things for them to try. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, are there any other questions? Okay, at this time, do you anticipate discussion of these ideas and formulating a plan of attack? Or
Well, here are some ideas. You can give us more things to do and report back in May, our May meeting. And then in June, we could have the meeting with some of the residents. We can notify the residents and show them what we've come up with. The basic thing we did last month, this month, and next month would be to get a good idea of things that work, so that when we do meet with the residents, we've got a good program going right off the front. And then we can explain some of those things to them so we get started off well. Tonight, we can say that this program that we're recommending is the one you want to go with, and we can just set it up that way. We can prepare some better exhibits and do some more fine-tuning on some of the details, and then be ready for the citizens in June. Or you can tell us to go back and do something different,
back to the
change.
drawing board.
Right.
Okay, commissioners, how do you, Commissioner?
My only suggestion would be that the only part of that plan, I like John's plan. The only plan I didn't like was that to do it in the third week of June which is our regular meeting, that is probably one of the worst weeks to try and get hold of parents. It's the very first week full week after school lets out. And so I don't know what our level of participation would be. I'm not suggesting that we would necessarily change the meeting unless, of course, we can't get a quorum. But maybe, and I wouldn't suggest that the July meeting is necessarily any better. I mean, it's vacation time, but business has to be done. So maybe you do put in an extra 30 days and notify people that it's going to take place at the July meeting, so that if it fits in their schedule, it does. But that first week after June is just after the school lets out. I believe it lets out on the 15th. Is a challenging time if you want parents' feedback.
We do want parents' feedback, but these are more than neighbors of the areas, and they may or may not be the parents. They're just the ones who are encountering all the problems because they live there, where the parents are driving past with their kids. So that may or may not be critical. Are there any other comments?
Based on the number of people we've had attend the previous meetings on this subject, I don't think we'll have a problem having a turnout in June. The sooner we have this, the sooner the people in the neighborhood on Manzanas in the surrounding areas are going to be satisfied. It's been a long time coming, and from my recollection, they want results. It's been going on too long.
Commissioner?
Yeah, I think that if I agree with the commissioner that they'll probably show up, the residents, and we've had cases where residents didn't show up because they didn't apparently think it was that important, but I think they will on this. But I would like to see some discussion of some of the issues of what we would like staff to bring back.
Do you want to start us off?
Okay. In terms of further formatting for the purpose of the meeting, and I don't have the details, but just as a suggestion, I would like to see something that, because we agree that there are kind of two maybe countering issues in this particular street, we should provide some kind of a chart that says, if we do this, is it how it's going to affect those issues, benefits, if you will. And I suspect it'll mainly show we're not going to change the school thing much, okay? And I think we ought to be honest with them on that and make it clear, because just throwing a lot of things at it may not change some of the issues at all. And so we need to make sure people understand that and don't let them walk away with a false impression that we're going to solve everything. And I would leave it to you to the format of the chart, but we ought to have something that very clearly projects potential benefits of various stages on the particular issues, or at least, and maybe we ought to restate what we believe as we heard the issues from them, and what we think we can address. That's my suggestion.
Sitting here, what they brought before us and they signed a petition for was speed humps. And so it seemed to me that the concern of the first neighbors that came to us was speed. And they said, except for pickup and drop off time at Redwood, when it's very congested, that people speed in front of their home. So it still seems to me that the bulk of the neighborhood was coming to us more for speed calming measures than, I think they kind of understood the school congestion part, and that's frustrating. But I think what I understood for them to say is that when it's not school time, which is all the weekends and the nights and that kind of thing, is people drive way too fast on Camino Manzanas. And so that's what I heard from them. So I think what they want from us is something that is going to calm the speed. And, I don't think, we can go through these things and hope that they, in this order, and hope that they'll be happy with that. It might not happen fast enough for them, but I really think that that's what I got from them, was they wanted the people to slow down.
Commissioner?
I agree. I agree with virtually what everybody said. I would maybe look at it a different way, and my question would be this. When we look ahead, I mean, you guys have done a tremendous amount of work so far, and I'm wondering if we should do any more work or whether we should have the involvement of the citizens first. You might still net out making a decision in June, but maybe in May, that would be when you invite the citizens, if for no other reason, to make certain that we're not going down the wrong path. Because if speed is the main issue, and getting the speed humps is the timely solution to their problem, then they go forth and get what they need to get from the community at that point in time, and they're doing that in May, when they still have, the ability to get it done. I don't know, after any amount of discussion, that we can expect staff to go back and do any more work. I mean, everything's really right in front of us. I think the responsibility for the work right now is probably a combination of us and the citizens. And so I guess what I would suggest as part of our discussion is that we accelerate things in such a way that we probably have a two-part meeting in May, where the first part is reaffirming and understanding what the community was really interested in to begin with. We have all of this information that we've had already a week to study, and we'll have another 4 weeks to study it, make ourselves familiar with it. And then we should be armed with staff's guidance to make a decision that night after we hear, or make a recommendation, I should say, that night after we hear where the citizens really want us to go. I think we could streamline the process and do a better job.
Well, if what I'm hearing you say is, I think that you're saying we have what we need, we just want citizens' input to make sure that we're doing what they want. So whether we do it in May or in June, it's the same thing.
I am, but I'm also remembering that I think Commissioner McKay is right on the money. They started this with the first and major concern being speed.
And they've already been turned down for speed humps. We are not able to give them speed humps. So they need to know that we have all these other alternative things that we'd like to try, and we'd like to try them in a certain order. But I don't know what other input you think they're going to give us. We've already told them no on this.
Well, I think what I've learned here is that there's no such thing as a permanent no. Am I not on?
I can't tell.
Yeah. There's no such thing as a permanent no to speed bumps. They don't meet the criteria they did not meet the criteria to get speed bumps last time. Okay? So what I'm suggesting is, first of all, I think you're right. At that meeting, face the facts, folks, you didn't make the criteria to get the speed bumps. That doesn't mean it can't be done. That doesn't mean you can't go out and get it done. It just hasn't happened to date. And here are the alternatives that staff has done work on and enlightened us on that could happen in lieu of speed humps without the same, as I said earlier, without the same criteria being met. And then say, what do you think? You could literally hear people say, no, speed humps was what we wanted, and if you tell us this is the criteria, we're going to take another shot at getting it. And if that doesn't work, here's what we rank as number 1, and here's what we rank as number 2. And we literally find back from them, I don't know if it can be done in 30 days, but then they go back out and come back to us at the June meeting, and now you're at decision time. You may be at decision time that night when they say, you know what, we haven't got the time to go out and get these signatures and get everything we need for speed humps. So let's deal with your, option A and option B. I think that's what I'm suggesting. The criticism that I've heard the most is that we don't streamline things enough. And the folks at Valley Spring, it's a nightmare I have regularly, was that it took 11 years to get to some area of decision, and we're still, in all fairness, we're not there yet. It's not installed yet. So I think we should keep that in mind.
Mr. Helliwell, did you have a comment?
I was just going to mention something that I remember from the meetings. What I recall was that there was almost an equal number of people that wanted something done as opposed to an equal number of people that didn't want anything done. They thought everything was fine. And I think that was, part of the big message that the council heard was that, okay, well, there's a split on this, and there's people, we shouldn't do anything. But we'll send it back to the Traffic Commission to see if there's some other ideas they can come up with. So I would suspect that even if we do come up with some ideas, there probably will be as many or maybe fewer people that will still say we shouldn't do anything. There's nothing to fix. Okay, so just keeping that in mind, because that's how I remember kind of like the summary of what the people wanted. But having a meeting in May would be fine with us. We can still meet that. We'll notice the neighbors, the same people that spoke, the people that we'd noticed originally, the large area, and just see what they think, because it's their street, and this is a very multiple step process. This is just part of it. After this, we've got to figure out where we're going to get the money, because we don't have the money. We don't know about that, how we're going to build things. And then we're going to take this on, and it has to, even if it gets that approval, it's going to take quite a long time, many months, to design it, because there just isn't, it has to be designed for this street. There just isn't a standard thing you can just put in there. So there's more reviews coming, and Traffic Commission and the neighborhood may want to be involved with those when it gets to a more refined, we narrow down the best design and tweak it and make it fit the street. Everyone might want to get involved with that. So I think we're on the right track, and all your ideas sound very good to me. We can have the meeting in May or June. I do want to add this, that based on my experience, whenever we've had a meeting that people felt was very important, and we had it during a vacation time, we were highly criticized for doing that. So whether it was the December holidays or the summer holidays. So.
Well, I think that if I'm hearing correctly, Commissioner Lemo wanted to do it in a two-step process, May being kind of input from the community, and then June being a decision-making meeting. I think that in order, for many reasons, number one, because we do have all your work in front of us, we do have 30 days to notice the community. I don't see why we can't make May an action item, so that if we can make a decision in May and not postpone it till June when it's another 30 days, it's a vacation time. I don't see the need to have that little review month. I think this report is really well prepared. It's given us more than I can come up with as far as ideas. I don't hear anybody else here with any ideas. So I think we should proceed in May, make it an action item. If we find in May that we can't make a decision, we can table it or we can postpone it, but at least it gives us the opportunity to speed things up if we can. Does that sound good to everybody? We don't need to vote on that, or do we? We'll do a real quick vote. All those in favor? No? All those in favor of noticing the community, the whole community, about this recommendation from Mr. Helliwell and staff, and having it as an action item, so that if we can come to a decision in May, then we'll do that. If you're in favor of that, raise your hand. Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. Did we cover all the bases, Ben? Okay. All right. Commissioner?
Mr. Helliwell, in the notice that will go to the residents there, will they also get at least a briefing of your step-by-step proposal, so that they at least will come prepared?
Yes, we can do that. We can have a notice on one side of the sheet, and the other side of the sheet we can have what staff's recommendation is, or something that, as long as it doesn't look like our minds are already made up.
Right,
we ought to keep it open.
Right? This is what's being considered.
Yeah, here's what's being considered, and that usually the best approach. Yeah, good idea.
That is a good idea. Commissioner?
Mr. Hollywell, is there any way we could put Exhibit E on the web? people who wished more information then could download it.
Yes,
Thank you.
that can be done.
All right, thank you. Are there any more comments before we move on? Questions? Okay. Item 9B, potential changes to the Traffic and Transportation Advisory Commission. Discuss the options, report by Traffic Engineering Division Manager Halliwell.
Thank you. This brief one-page report is in your packet as a result of a recommendation that was made by the city's Community Budget Task Force about the overall trend of reducing the size of committee, commissions, and boards. And since we're a commission, we fall in that category. Right now, we're currently a 7-member commission. 5 members are appointed by individual council members, and 2 are appointed by the council as a whole, and they're members at large. And the basic recommendation was from staff was to, since so many of these terms, there's at least 4 terms that are expiring or have expired this month, expired in March, I'm sorry, and 3 that will be expiring next March, that we recommend that those terms be extended to the end of the year, to the end of 2006, and that it be a smaller commission. Now that's the basic concept here. So it's up to you to discuss this matter and give us a recommendation that we can take on to the City Council.
I think that the easy one, so I'll talk about that first, is revising the terms. I think that having it go from January instead of March makes a lot of sense. So I think that's an easy one to say yes to in terms of the changes to. I mean, I'm speaking for people I'm extending their terms, but I think that having the terms be at the same time as the council gets elected makes a lot of sense. And so that part, I think, is an easy one to say yes to, at least for me.
That's fine. My guess is that they were initiated in March is because the council members took office in January and then needed some time to appoint. Is that how that originally happened?
I think that was basically it. It was since there's so many commissions and committees that it was a huge burden to have so many applications come in, and then the council had to go through all those and make decisions, that it was spread out a little bit, and we happened to be spread out into the March area.
And that's no longer a concern, I guess.
I guess.
Commissioner?
Well, a couple of things, a little bit of history. In the past, in other commissions, the same, save maybe the Planning Commission, but in other commissions, similar situations took place, and the term would run still the same, and if necessary, the council would have no problem in saying, we can't get our decision made. The election took place in November. We can't get our decision made by December, so we'll extend it to January. But the term never adjusted based upon their extension. It did here somehow. And I agree, and I was looking at all of the expiration dates, and I think the way that staff put this together works out well, because we're now down to 1 at-large position. Council has sent a small message by not appointing another at-large. And the at-large position we have would be extended through December as well. Thus, all of us that would expire in December of 2006 would just be thrown into the hopper with new applicants as well. So it does put it on a fair footing. And my recommendation, and if it may be too early for a motion or not, would be to accept staff's recommendation and send that to council, because ultimately it's their decision anyway. And I think this makes sense. I think staff did a good job.
I question. We have a vice chair who's been waiting patiently to become chair. At what point would that happen? When does my term end as chair, and when would our vice chair take over? Or, I mean, how would that work?
Let's see, you became chair at the beginning of the year, right? Well, it's usually done on the calendar year.
Okay.
The expectation is that the person following the chair is usually the vice chair. Whether it's an at-large person or not, if the council that's in place after the next election doesn't choose any of us that are up, then the vice chair doesn't follow as chair, and that's in every single committee and commission in the city. Even at council, the person who in the past had rightly, traditionally been the mayor pro tem, there has been at least one time that I recall very well, did not happen. So it is based not on the person holding the chair, it's based upon the term first always. In theory, everyone up at the end of December could not come back if that was the choice of the pleasure of council.
I think, though, that because Sharon became chair again when you and I got appointed a year ago, and I think that this would extend her term as chair another few months, and so I think that's what you were asking. Am I correct?
It seems a bit unfair. That's all. That's all I'm saying is, it's a much longer term than originally planned for me. That's all.
Yes, Sandy pointed out to me that actually you were appointed last year, and so you're actually, and because of at the beginning of the year, with the resignations and things that took place, beginning of this year, 2006, the resignations, that you just continued on. So officially, we probably should have elected a new chair in January. But we didn't know because there were people that were missing and all that. So we were trying to sort that out, and it's taken 3 months to do that.
Okay, Commissioner.
Just a quick question. I think I know the answer, but for the record, the only person who doesn't show which council member they're an appointee of is our chair. And I say even by process of elimination, but I happen to know, but process of elimination, it would be Mayor Pro Tem Fox. Is that correct? Okay. And so those appointments would come or reappointments, depending on what they decided, would come in November as well. And the other thing about the chair is it is at the pleasure of the commissioners, and of course the person who accepts the responsibility, to extend their term. And I thought I remembered that you had decided to extend your term one more year, which it's a 3 months now because we're going back to calendar as opposed to following appointments.
I did put in my application to extend my term, but these applications have not been. Nobody said anything to me whether, I don't know. I'm here again.
I mean, if I read this, it said that they basically didn't look at those applications. They were asking the people that were sitting to stay on through December to get us on that January to December calendar. And so the question before us is, do you stay on as chair through that period or not?
And so I'm just trying to be fair. What do we do about that? I'm happy to serve. I don't know if that's fair to the other commission members. If I continue, I want to do what's fair. So.
There's no bylaws on this, I assume?
Commissioner?
Well, just to get us started in some direction, because we have to go somewhere, my suggestion would be that we follow staff's recommendation, and because this is a time of change and adjustment, that hasn't been decided by council yet. That in addition to following staff's recommendation here, our chair and vice chair would stay in place as they are through December of this year, unless and in fact the chair no longer wanted to serve, or the vice chair decided did not want to be vice chair, and then we'd appoint another, and that would be my motion.
Okay. This is really uncomfortable. How do you feel about that?
Well, maybe I can make it easier for you. I looked at the staff suggestions, and interesting, people stayed away from it since from the first appearance, it probably affects me more. I think it's a fairly rational thing to have one person per city council member. They have had some difficulty of appointing the others and filling them, as we have seen, and this takes that difficulty away from each person only has to pick one. They don't have to get everybody to agree. So I think that's a fairly practical thing to do. And I think it makes the commission probably, from at least the task they have given us, less wieldy. So I don't have any problem with that. And on the other, as long as you're willing to serve, I guess, and finish it out, I don't see a problem with that. We don't right now. I wouldn't want to deal with it anyway because we don't know what the city council will do and how they will accept this. So I wouldn't propose any changes. The only comment I'd have, I guess, the only thing that surprised me on this whole process was that they actually decided to extend our commission. My perception is they have asked us to do less than they should have to lower their load. And I would have liked to seen something in it. The suggestions that we have from the staff I think are very good. I would have liked to seen something in it to ask them to give us more specific duties, at least as an advisory commission. You know, when we had the ad hoc school committee, we didn't have an advisor on that to even report back or give them any help and relieve them some from those meetings. Likewise, we're not involved in any of the circulation element reviews or anything like that. So I would see that there are things, if they wish to use the commission, they should use it more. And that would be my recommendation, and I wouldn't necessarily fiddle with this motion, but that would be my comments from being on the commission in the last 3 years. I think we could have helped them in several places, and later when we talk about work things, I have a suggestion that I would like to see us do. Anyway, that's my comments on it. So until the city council has acted on it, certainly I wouldn't want to change anything.
In that case, why don't we vote on the motion?
Could you redefine the motion again just one more time for us here, just to get all the points?
My motion was to support staff's recommendation as detailed in the memo from Traffic Engineering Division Manager Hallowell, and to extend also the term of our chair and vice chair to coincide with the staff's recommendation on the commission positions, so that they would coincide with our current chair and vice chair position.
Thank you. Commissioner McKay?
Yes.
Commissioner McDonald?
Yes.
Commissioner Lemo?
Yes.
Commissioner Garvin?
Yes.
Commissioner or Vice Chair Morris?
Yes.
And Chairman?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries 6-0.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate. Right. Well, you know what? We work together well. I think we're going to be fine. Engineer report, item 9C, traffic signal preemption report by Traffic Engineer Division Manager Hallowell.
Thank you. This is information item. Not asking for we're not recommending anything. Basically, we just wanted to talk a little bit about one of the systems that we have here in the city that involves our traffic signals. All our traffic signals are what we call fully actuated signals. It means they're responsive to traffic, and traffic comes up to one leg of the intersection, and it sends a signal to the computer of the traffic signal, and it goes through its cycling. And the difference is that during certain times of the day on certain streets, we have the signals in coordination, so that it helps traffic flow well, so it's less congested. And so we're always trying to maintain levels of service at intersections that are free-flowing and non-congested. And there's different ways of measuring that. And then there's a third element that's included with traffic signals, and that's where you have little special systems that preempt or supersede these other fully actuated and the coordinated systems. And those are systems that are not extensive in this city, but some cities, especially downtown areas, highly congested areas like downtown Los Angeles, that are streets that are on grid systems, where the streets are close together and they're at perpendicular angles to each other. They have enacted what they call their preemption or mobile preemption systems, and that is where emergency vehicles, the fire, the police, and ambulances can preempt the normal traffic signal programs in planning and sequencing, and give them the green light, and holds back the traffic on the other areas. In Thousand Oaks, we don't have an extensive system, but we do have a couple places where we have this type of a preemption thing, and they're at the fire stations. And one is a fire station that's at Moore Park in Arbalez, and the other one is at the fire station on Hillcrest down by the Oaks Mall. And that's a hardwire connection. There's actual wire that goes from the firehouse into the controller, and when they have an alarm and they're responding, they push this button, and tells that controller, and that particular signal talks to all the other ones that are down the line and gives them the green light. And at the same time, it also gives the red light in the other direction, so it stops the traffic from going through the intersection. So nobody goes through the intersection except the emergency responders, and they go through. And in some cases, there's at the fire station that's on Moore Park in Arbalez. Recently, we got a system where they can also preempt the system when they return after the fire, to hold the traffic while they back up their fire trucks. And so far it's worked pretty good. In fact, they're asking for more locations. But to really do the same kind of system that we have in downtown areas, it's very costly and very expensive, and we have not seen the need to expand the system that way. Just so in case you ever need to answer questions about that, we do have a system of preemption in the city and very limited, but actually it works quite well. For instance, the fire station at Moore Park and Arbalez, when they push the button there, they can go all the way down to Jan's Road, and it holds everybody. And it's timed so that as the truck goes down there and it passes that point, the signal goes back to the normal operation after it passes, so it doesn't hold up traffic for long periods of time. It also works in the westerly direction, so along Arbalez all the way to Lynn Road, and the Lynn Road signal also works that way. So just a little bit of information. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
The one on Hillcrest, I know that emergency light goes on right outside, and then is it all of Hillcrest, including the Lynn and Hillcrest intersection? Does it preempt that one for them to go out that way?
Yes, it gives the green light from on Hillcrest from Lynn Road to Canal Boulevard. Canal Boulevard's that first signal west of Moore Park.
So, but it doesn't give it to them at Moore Park.
Not now.
I mean, that's the only one that would seem like it might, if you were ever going to extend it, that Moore Park Road. I mean, I've seen them try to get through there, and if that one's not, they're not stopped there, that would seem like maybe one place.
It probably will eventually once we get all the conduits in, but we've been able to use the underground conduits that we've already have without having any big expensive projects installed. So in other words, we've done as much as we can do with minimum expenditure in existing facilities. If we want to expand the system, this preemption system more, it would take a detailed study and analysis to determine whether it's really necessary or not.
I'm not asking for that. I just kind of wanted to know how far it went, and it just, Moore Park is a pretty busy road that it probably be nice if it stopped, but. Thank you. Are there any other questions? Okay. Item number 10, status report of prior traffic commission recommendations. Dial-a-ride fare policy went to the council on March 21st and was approved as recommended. Item 11, traffic commission comments. Did you have something? Did you? Okay. Commissioner?
Mr. Halliwell, I have a question on the time someone presses a button at any cross street. How much time is allotted? Are all the pedestrian signals timed the same length throughout the city? Or are there, for instance, the one at by CLU and Moore Park, okay, Olson and Moore Park. I've had someone call me and say they can't walk across the street because it's only 20 seconds. And are all the signals, when they push that button, are they all the same throughout the city? Or do we take into account for different locations where there are senior citizens that take them a longer period of time to cross the street? That's my question.
The pedestrian walking times are based on a very slow 4 feet per second walk. In some cases, we've added, it's 4 feet per second, plus there's a 7-second clearance. So say you have a certain width of street, the amount of time is based on the width of the street, and 4 feet per second is how much time they get. Plus, they get 7 seconds of clearance, and they get another second of an all red before a conflicting green light would go on in the other direction. So when you push the button, you're supposed to start when you see the walking figure. If you start before you see the walk, if you start when the hand's red, I mean, you may not have enough time to get across the road. And in some cases, you can do that if you walk fast enough. But that's why the pedestrian signals are there, to tell you when to walk so that you have the maximum amount of time. And every walking time has been checked, and there's more than ample time. And every time we go out and check something that someone's not happy with, we find out that there's more than ample time. Some signals we have added even more time. For instance, the signal that's out here on the in front on Dallas Drive and Thousand Oaks Boulevard, because of the high volume of Civic Arts Plaza pedestrians when an event is over, there's more time added there because we want to clear all those pedestrians off the street. but that's basically the way it's done. So every intersection is different because every width of the street is basically different.
Okay, but some senior citizens have trouble making that crossing if they're with a walker. For instance, I timed that signal I personally went through all 4 segments of that signal on Olson and Moore Park. The white signal comes on, the white walking man comes on for 4 seconds. And by the time you get to the other side, the red hand, permanent red hand, flashing red hand works for about 20 seconds. Then the red hand comes on, and it's about 25 seconds, and then the signals change. And that happens at all 4 segments, even with the new push button there. So,
well, there is some work still being done at that particular intersection. Now, I don't know whether that, in this particular case, has, anything's changed there from what I just said. But I know there's more work being done there. There's signals are being added and foundations are being made, and we can check that and let you know what we find out. But
I would appreciate that. Thank you.
In general, that's how the system's set up throughout the city.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any more comment, Commissioner?
I've noticed in some other communities now they're putting in they actually show a timer for the red light the pedestrian crossing. Is that planned here in Thousand Oaks? I think I've seen it in Simi and some other communities.
Yes, those are called pedestrian countdown timers, countdown signals. We have those along Thousand Oaks Boulevard here from Los Feliz to Canal School Road, kind of that zone, because that's a high pedestrian area, so we added them there. Probably in the long term we'll have them other places. We don't have plans to put them in. In other words, when we have a new signal, we don't necessarily put them in. It seems like there would be a lot of benefit to it, but all the studies that we've researched is that the main thing that comes out of that is that all they do is provide more information. They don't make it safer for the pedestrians, not any safer, or no other benefit like that, just more information. Some people just like to know how much time they got left. And so, yeah, they've used them in other communities, and other people think a lot of them. And I've gone down to high pedestrian areas like 3rd Street Promenade down in Santa Monica, and people take advantage of them down there. In other words, they know how they got 2 seconds left, they'll go. Whereas if they didn't have them, they probably wouldn't cross the street.
Well, and also depending on how much time and money you want to invest in Santa Monica, they've changed it yet again, where in the last 6 seconds, I think it is, they start a chirping sound. And there are traffic police all over the place. And if you step off the curb to begin your walk when the chirping sound starts, you have a beautiful jaywalking ticket waiting for you on the other end. And there's probably 20 cops every lunchtime, or 20 traffic control people on lunchtime. So it depends how far you want to go from an enforcement standpoint here, because to have them without the enforcement just kind of hacks up your traffic. So just for somebody who used to work in Santa Monica, weird down there.
Commissioner?
Yes, I would like to see an item put on at least for discussion after the staff proposes what it would take for in the work schedule. And what I'm thinking of is that most of the things, as I've complained before, we're presented with a dead horse, but we've all been hoping for, and now it looks like it may happen. There's going to be activity starting eventually on the 23. But we can be sure that when that does happen, there's going to be a lot of upset people as the traffic diverts. And I think it would be good for the commission to look into not only the staff may be doing it, but holding some hearings and maybe even subcommittees, and I would leave it up to the staff to suggest, to at least study beforehand what responses we should take, if any, and on what streets, and so that and present something to the city council if we see that's right, or nothing if that's the right thing to do. But I think we ought to have looked at it before it becomes a disaster, because that will be going on for several years, and the staff can find out probably the schedule of how it would be shifted. Anyway, I would like to see something brought on for us to deal with on that.
There is a committee in place working with that, and two of the council members, Councilmember Gillette and Councilmember Irwin, are on it. And as a matter of fact, Wes and I have been at the meeting. I missed the last meeting. Maybe was there an update that you can give us on what happened at the meeting?
No, we're still working on it. Our prime concern is the traffic expected on Lynn Road. But I don't know where, past Lynn Road, I don't know if we'll be working in any other sections or not. But I think that all the major streets in the city are going to be affected, from Herbs right on down through Westlake Boulevard, Moore Park, Lynn Road. There are all going to be many freeways, I'm afraid.
But the council is aware of it, and they've set up a separate committee for that. And so whether or not it'll be effective or not, they are working on that. Are there any other comments?
I guess I get confused by that there's a separate committee that has to do with traffic, and the traffic commissioners at large don't know about it. It was kind of like when we heard that they had these subcommittees looking at traffic around the schools, and we have all the parents coming to us talking about the various issues on the schools, yet we weren't invited to be on any of these committees. And I guess I would love it if there was better communications, like Commissioner Morris had mentioned earlier, just better utilization of our services. You know, we do get people talking to us, and at various places, wherever we are. In fact, someone will bring something up about traffic, and then we hear these subcommittees that we don't have any knowledge of or any input into, and that is a frustration, and I just wish we could fix that.
I was invited to be on that committee about 2 months ago, and they had been meeting. I was invited to go to a meeting, and I went to my first meeting, and then I was unable to go to the next meeting. I will be happy to report back to this commission what is discussed and what has come up, and I will be at the next meeting. It was an unfortunate situation.
No, and I'm glad to hear that they invited you, because I think that's a start in the right direction.
I think it was because we had all expressed frustration before about the one with the schools and all that. I think that they responded to our frustration. I'm assuming that's the motivation. Okay. Are there any other comments? Okay. The next item is our work program, and we can actually make a little change to this. We can put May next to traffic calming community meetings. And I guess I skipped item 13, engineer comments. Do we have any comments? Okay. At that, we will adjourn to 7:30 p.m. Wednesday, May 17th, 2006, in the boardroom of the Civic Arts Plaza on the 3rd floor. Thank you, everybody.
Skull compared with the skull found in the tomb. The deformed skull tells story that this person was not